to this day? Like, how often do you say, for Stevie, I'm going to do this for Steve? Like, how often is that motivational and guiding? And is it constant? Is it there every single second?
Yeah.
And it's
Um,
just become,
it's everything. I think that when you obviously as a parent, because I know it's true for Ben too, but something I've learned that especially as a mom who physically grew her, there's this physical thing that happened to me after that you always feel as a mom, but losing her helped me like not just feel it, like see it, realize it, understand it of oh, she's literally part of me. And she's not here, but she is literally part of me. And I struggle with being able to access her. Like that's the hardest part of grief is wanting so desperately to be able to access her and not be able to or not feel like I am. And obviously I would love to be able to access her physically, but I just mean like on a spiritual level. I struggle with that. And so it's reminding myself that like she is literally DNA a part of me. And so her legacy and purpose, because I can't bear the thought of it just being over, like it is in everything I do. Everything. Because what she taught me in my experience with her is in everything I do because it's completely changed me as a person. Like I am a completely different person because of her. So as a result, everything after Stevie is different. It's all
yeah,
laced with her.
yeah,
Every bit of it is influenced by her.
yeah.
Every moment, you
And
know?
ultimately, the perspective, it really hit me what you said. And I see so much about the way you live. And I want to talk about more about, service and the decisions you make and
Mm-hmm.
how you live your life. But to be able to spread, these lessons that you've learned, but you don't want folks to have to have been through what you've been through, is beautiful and just like says such volumes about who you are and this your how enlightened you are and graceful you are and your family is. um,
There's a flip side to that too, though, of, the lessons that we learned as a result of the trauma that, you wouldn't wish on anyone. But then there's also the lessons we've learned that are inevitable for every single one of us. And I think that I still haven't wrapped my brain around what it looks like, my purpose in this pain. I get glimpses here and there, but I don't know fully what that's going to look like, other than I come back to the message all the time of like the language of grief and how just as a people we don't know how to speak it. We've for so many years and so many generations, we there's a stigma around it, and you don't talk about it, and we don't talk about the people we lost, or you grieve in private. Why do we grieve in private? Like, I know it's a deeply personal thing, like, but every single one of us is going to experience love and loss in this life, guaranteed.
yeah,
No matter where you're from, what your background is, what your circumstance is. And so I always say that like grief has the power to unify us. It
for
is
sure,
it is the one thing we all have in common.
for sure,
Like we can find all the reasons that we're divided, but grief is
for
what we have
sure.
in common. So why aren't we learning how to talk about it? Why do we have shame and stigma around it when it can be a bridge for so many things? Because so many decisions or so much fear that we live in is coming from what we're afraid to lose.
Mm.
And if we would just be more willing to talk about what we're afraid to lose vulnerably, we would understand each other so much better, because I think that our capacity to listen would increase. I think we would get so much better at listening if we were willing to talk about our own vulnerability like a lot more. And those are the two things missing for connection. And so the problem with grief is that we all do it differently and there isn't a right or wrong way. And for me, the approach I've taken is purpose in the pain. And I feel like 100% certain and committed to that. And I do not, I think that everything happens for a reason. And I do not mean it in that cheesy, like, oh, that's so great, this all happened for a reason. I mean, if it happened and it sucked, you better believe I'm going to use it to make something better out of the shitty situation. Like, I'm gonna use it. Or why did it happen? Like, what a disservice to her. This is my personal opinion, that if I just let this continue on throughout our family as this tragedy that happened and nothing more, as opposed to this tragedy that became a miracle for so many people or for ourselves. And whether it's a tiny miracle, like I'll get messages from people just saying like, I mothered differently just because of your experience. Like, my patience level this summer having my kids home. And that's a tiny thing that is going to have generational impact.
Yeah.
Just patience with our kids, or perspective, or just a tiny bit of more gratitude or appreciation for the small moments that we maybe take for granted that we're all guilty of because life is hard and exhausting. To me, those are miracles. And those are the purpose in the pain that I felt and continue to feel. That's the purpose behind it. And again, because I've been through this, now people who have grieved or people who have lost children are all around me now and like front row, and they don't all share that perspective. And I would never force that on them. I would never, ever for a second judge the way that they're choosing to grieve or the perspective that they're choosing to have. It might not fit for me and how I'm going to be able to wake up and continue on through this life and how I'm going to be able to keep showing up. I wouldn't be able to keep showing up without the perspective that I have. But we all get to choose how we grieve, or we all just get to let grief happen to us in our own way. Because there's not a lot of choice in grief, but we let it happen to us in certain ways, and we don't all do that the same. And we are so quick to judge the way the others grieve. And I know I've been judged, and I know that prior to going through my own grief, I'm sure that I judged others or had opinions on what they did. You know, she passed away. Go ahead.
No, you.
Well, I was just going to say that when she passed away, we didn't get to have a funeral because it was COVID, and we were only allowed to have 9 immediate family members outdoors at her burial. And I remember thinking, like, just another freaking tragedy of this whole thing. Like, are you kidding me? Now I can't even like honor her death. I can say now that was the biggest blessing to ever happen to us, ever, because Ben and I, who maybe would have had a tendency to make that day about other people, we just got to be with our boys, and we just got to be with her. And it didn't matter. We didn't have thousands of people watching us cry. Like, we got to fall apart. We got to walk barefoot next to, like, we just got to be there and not have it be a production. We didn't have to produce anything. I didn't have to go get pictures of her blown up and make sure we had enough like, I didn't have to do any of that I would have had to do. And it felt like a loss at that time. And I can look back now and see, like, gosh, that was a really beautiful day, because that decision was just made for us. It was just made for us that we had to say goodbye to her in that way.